I know a great real estate agent you should hire. He's very enthusiastic and well-intentioned. He's also completely honest and trustworthy, and he really wants to do a great job for you. On the other hand, he has never sold a house before. He has never taken a real estate course and does not hold a real estate license and knows nothing about real estate law. He has no background in sales or marketing and doesn't know anybody in the real estate business. He doesn't know how to find prospective buyers, although he's confident that won't be a problem, and he admits to being completely unfamiliar with the elements of negotiating a real estate contract. In fact, he's never even drafted a real estate contract. He doesn't have access to the multiple listing service. He's not even sure what that is or what it offers. And he knows nobody in the mortgage, title settlement, or related fields. Nor does he know anything about these businesses. But like I said, guy's honest, motivated, and wants to do a great job for you. And best of all, he's free. Would you hire him? Of course not. It's obvious why such a person is willing to work for free. Nobody would ever think of paying him. Yet if you're planning to sell your own home without the benefits of a real estate agent, this is exactly who you are hiring. You're hiring yourself. Rick Eidelman, The Truth About Money. Hi there, my name is Charles Ray Dawson. I'm the Associate Broker Residential Sales Manager at ProStar Realty. This is the Unnamed Real Estate Podcast, episode 185. And once again, I hope you guys are all doing good. Thank you for joining me this evening, this day, whatever you decided to hit play on this video. It's been a fun week, and we're rocking and rolling. I hope you guys liked that cold intro. That is actually something I discovered on Facebook. Yeah, one of those, there's about 50 gazillion Facebook real estate pages, and that one is actually from a group called The Lighter Side of Real Estate, which I thought was pretty awesome. I'm sitting there and I'm reading it, and it's, that just popped up, and I knew it was good copy when I suddenly just got trapped. I mean, I'm just reading, glancing, Lighter Side of Real Estate, and that first sentence, the second sentence, I'm like, ooh. And then I read the whole thing, I went, oh yeah. This is going on the podcast tomorrow. And since I recorded that as a separate video, I can now use that for advertising. I might put that on a reel. Who knows? Anyways, what's going on in the world today? Okay, we got the DNC is happening. A whole bunch of politicians are talking politicky stuff. Real estate is real estating. Our interest rates are starting to trickle a little bit down. With the adjustment in the Bureau of Labor Commission's labor numbers, apparently they've admitted that they've been sort of fudging the numbers upward, but to the tune of about 800,000 jobs over the last year. This has driven the rumor mill even more, going, okay, now the Fed has to cut rates. Part of what the Fed was doing to justify not cutting rates yet is they were sitting there saying, we're not looking at a recession. Look at all the employment we have, going to the labor board and running their numbers. Well, the labor board just came up and said, yeah, actually, they weren't as good as we thought they were. Sorry, our bad. In fact, I don't even think they said sorry, our bad. They just, because they always come up with the numbers and then they always adjust them as theoretically more data comes in. Some wag on the internet's pointed out is like, why do these numbers always reflect the overall sentiment that they are trying to push? You never see somebody come up with these numbers and go, oh, wow. Hey, yeah, remember when we said we only had 500,000 jobs last year? It was actually 750. We underreported. They always seem to be skewed one direction or the other. And the internet's out there. There's about 50,000 tinfoil hat theories about why that particularly is, especially on an election year. But we'll pass on that. To get a little political, I did notice that the Secretary of Commerce was asked by a reporter about those numbers, and her response was, well, that candidate always lies. And when the reporter said, no, that actually came from the labor board, she said, I don't know who that is. All right, like it's literally your job to know who that is. So keep that in mind when you're trying to figure out what's going on with our economy right now. What else is going on with our economy? Our numbers are doing numbery things. Check this stuff out, all right? Real quick. Bunk, bunk, bunk. How many times do I have to bang that button before something happens. All right, these are the numbers for August 22nd, 2024. Actives this week are 17,847, up 188 from last week. New listings are 1,931, down 24. Our contracts were 1,897, down 41, and closings last week were 1,414. Coming soon to an MLS near you is 593 new listings. And let's get down to these Cromford report numbers. All right, our Cromford report came down a little bit. It's at 99.7, still a very balanced market overall, with demand being at 73.4, slight decrease on that, and supply at a 73.7, a slight increase. So balanced market overall. But let's look at these individual areas because I saw something really fascinating here. Cave Creek. I gotta figure out what happens in Cave Creek. Cave Creek is like Tempe. Oh, and look at Tempe, down 18 month over month. Tempe went from 121.3 this time last month, which is a seller's market, to 99.1, which is a balanced market. Right. On the flip side, we saw Cave Creek go from a buyer's market at 80 up to a balanced market at 97.1. Big changes, right? Fountain Hill is still leading the pack and is up 12% over last month, right at 175.8. Chandler is still trickling down. They're actually 12% down. Like I said, double-digit changes. And at the bottom, Buckeye up 10%, all right, which isn't a lot overall. That means they go from 60.6 to 66.4, but that is still trending. You know, it's 10% change, trending up. Good for Buckeye. Queen Creek is down to 71.4. Maricopa is up to 71.8. And of course, that's where I will be with my buyers this weekend, because when my buyers said, Ray, where are the deals? I'm going to say, I said Maricopa, Buckeye. All right. For your price point, that's where we're going. So we're going to be going through 11 houses on Saturday because my first-time home buyers are very idealistic and they think we can knock these out really quick. And we're looking about 4 or 5 hours worth of driving around looking at pretty kitchens. So looking forward to doing that. Surprises falling. Goodyear's up. Cave Creek, like I said, is up 21%. Tempe is down 18%. All right. Our balanced markets right now are Peoria, Tempe, Cave Creek. All right. Our buyers markets are Goodyear, Surprise, Maricopa, Queen Creek, and Buckeye. And our sellers markets, Fountain Hill's leading the pack. Chandler, Avondale, Scottsdale, Phoenix, Mesa, Glendale, Gilbert, just barely Paradise Valley at 11.4, but we don't care about them because they're rich. All right, so I often wonder if I had multi-million-dollar buyers, you know, if I was in that price range, would I always say I don't care about Paradise Valley? I don't know. Let's find out. So, following up on the news and everything like that, we are seriously anticipating a rate change, all right, which is what everybody's been waiting for. It was reported to me by one of my little spies out in the community that like their Facebook feed is filled with real estate agents suddenly doing videos, all right, to catch up to try to explain to the consumer what you guys already know because you've been listening to me babble about this for the last 2 years. So good to see the rest of the pack show up. All right. All right. That means I will be in an easier position because I don't have to train the agent on the other side when I'm sending them an offer or receiving an offer from them. All right. Let's get this education out there. Come on, guys. Real estate, up your game. So only other thing I wanted to discuss, and this is really a cool article that came in this morning on a news site that I follow called 1440. And they just do a news drop every night. It drops right at about midnight. It's a really quick read. It shows up in my mailbox. Completely nonpartisan, completely non-spun. It's just news, right? Honestly, if I was not as neurotic as I am, I could probably just read that every morning over my coffee and be well more informed about how the world works than your average NPR listener, right? But they had a little throwaway article in here. Right. So let me lead this up to you like this. If we had a way to take a community and go from 27% home ownership, right, in less than 30 years, convert that to 90% home ownership, right, where roughly 4 out of 10, right, 2 out of 5 people actually own their own home, to 9 out of 10 in 30 years, would you be interested? are you thinking to yourself, where can I move to have this kind of benefit? What can I do? Well, there is a place out there. Right? Now, we all know that home ownership is important. It builds strong communities. It helps build strong families. It helps get people more involved in the world around them and off of television. Right? If nothing else, is because they're out there mowing the lawn and that kind of stuff. But we have often said that this is one of those things that we have as a a national strategic goal. We want more people to have home ownership. And we actually did peek out at a certain point, and I saw those numbers in this article. Let me see if I can find them again. I should have highlighted this whole thing. All right. I want to say it was in the 60s. I'm not finding it on this article right now. The writers of this article actually make what I consider a very, very serious editorial problem. They change from using numbers, like numerals, to writing out the number in and out. I was always taught if you start using numbers, you stay using numbers, right? But they were talking along the lines about how housing and... Okay, I see stuff about New York. I see stuff. Okay. At one point, I want to say it was like 2004, we had the highest rate of home ownership in the country. And we hit something like 65%. We're about 63%, but we're still up overall than when they started these programs back in the 40s and 50s. Right? But the winner who actually came up with this, all right, and just to follow up, this has election issues, right? The candidates are talking about how they want to increase home ownership. There's one candidate out there who wants to give a $25,000 credit or money to first-time home buyers, which everybody who owns a home is very interested in that passing, because that means that their house just went up $25,000. Right? It also means that lenders are very, very interested, because now they can raise their lending charges, their upfront charges, up by $25,000. And of course, this guy now knows that you, first-time home buyer, are actually going to have cash in hand to pay a real estate agent. Right? So who does this benefit the first-time home buyer? No, it just means everybody else gets more snouts in the trough. Right? But it's an idea. Right? The policy was also talking about they want to build 1 million more homes in America. I'm completely on board with that. Let's just make sure that they're affordable first-time housing homes, and that doing so, we cramp down some of these ridiculous zoning laws that we have out there that keeps municipality builders from building first-time homes in municipalities that might not want those dirty poor people around them. So let's crush those people. I'm on board with that too. But this particular country here, in this particular country, in case you're thinking about moving there, is called Singapore. All right, so I'm going to pull some history out of the top of my head. This may not be factually accurate, but it's going to be generally accurate, all right? So, for those who don't know, Singapore is a tiny island nation, all right, which encompasses, I think they were saying, 250 square miles, all right? So it's smaller than County of Maricopa. Right? They also have a population in the millions. If I'd done my homework right, I'd be able to rattle that off right now about how many people live in Singapore, right? But it's definitely in the millions. And they're more denser than Maricopa itself, right? So there are more people living there than Maricopa in a smaller area, right? And they were also run by a dictatorship after World War II. All right, now hear me out on this. They have elections. Okay, they have elections now, but during World War II, before World War II, the British Army and the British Empire ran Singapore. I don't know when they took it over. I don't know if they actually created Singapore whole cloth and just like landed some boats and just started a colony or whatever. But Singapore is an independent country now, originally, taken over, founded by the British, and then took over by the Japanese during World War II. And then the Brits eventually got it back. And then when Britain decided to get out of the empire game, they were released into the wild. So they were originally tied into the Malaysian Federation, that I know, and they got their independence in 1965 to be a separate sovereign island state, city-state of Singapore. This gives them a lot of advantages, right? And, it sounds weird, but when you're a tiny city-state, it's a lot easier to make changes than if you're a huge country, all right? Also, if you're a city-state that's been relatively just built up, all right, you don't have a lot of those ossified traditions and policies. Oh, we can't build on that mountain. That mountain is sacred to our ancestors from 50,000 years ago, whatever like that. So, and they're starting their government from scratch, so they can write a lot of stuff into that constitution. All right. Now, just before you think Singapore is awesome, remember, they will cane you. They will cane you, all right, for things that you might just get a ticket for here. All right, we're talking like spitting gum on the streets. That's a caning, all right? So, anyway, but the other thing that Singapore had is that it was an open colony with a lot of immigrants. So it had, Malaysians, Chinese, British expats, basically everything washing around the South China Sea could wash up into Singapore and make a living for themselves, right? But the government, trying to say, how are we going to stay functionally independent and functional, decided to make some really, really cool policies, right? The first thing they realized is we are never going to be able to feed ourselves. We do not have the agricultural land to grow enough food for ourselves. We're always going to have to be importing food. So why bother? Right? So they did a zoning thing, and they just went straight up, said, hey, every square foot of land that we can put a house on or put an apartment on or put a human being under our roof on is now housing zoned. So that was the first thing they did. Right? Other thing that they did is they were very, very forward focused on the importance of having home ownership. In fact, Singapore being a tiny country generally needs to get the most out of each manpower. So when they were recruiting the Singapore Army Navy, one of the things that they had to go along with is they wanted to make sure that they were recruiting soldiers and sailors from families who owned housing, right? So they had some skin in the game. Right. It's different when you just show up and you're like, oh, I'm going to join the army over here, and my folks came over here 3 years ago, and then one day my folks take off because Singapore's in a war with somebody. I might as well just join them. All right. There's not that sense of shared sacrifice and sense of sacrificing for the future. All right. So that's part of one of the reasons why Singapore made this a national policy. Right. The quote is, give all parents whose sons would have to do national service a stake in the Singapore their sons had to defend. All right. Okay. And the other thing is, here's another quote from a gentleman named Lee Kuan Yew, who was being interviewed for this article. I had seen how voters in capital cities always tended to vote against the government of the day, and it was determined that our householders should become homeowners, otherwise we would not have political stability. Wow, crazy. Homeownership leading to political stability. All right. So his cabinet used a three-prong approach, and this is what I want to talk about. Prong was going to create affordable housing. I know. Wow. Right? Going to make financing readily available to people of all walks of life. All right. Sounds good. So we got affordable housing. We got FHA secured loans. Tell me more. What's the third one? Help people gather down payments. All right. And this is where they did something that I don't think we could do in America. Okay. We tried touching this third rail, and I just gave you a clue there. We tried touching this third rail, and things would just absolutely blow up. But what they allowed to do, all right, their autonomous local governments created the Housing and Development Board to build up to 50,000 units of rental flats. All right, affordable enough for even the poor. Right, and then they started building. Used that build out as a template to start building condos using the same floor plans, using the same design principles. Right, you can rent this one over here, or you can buy this one over here. It's the same floor plan. Right, so that's actually pretty cool to begin with. Right, so they're building, they're renting. They're getting housing for people, all right? These basic condos were considered first homes, and that way would be personally and economically transformative for the new homeowner. Because remember, this is the path to wealth, is that forced savings plan that we call a mortgage. All right. And people started kicking in on that. All right. The other thing that they did, and this is serious, we can never do this here, right? Honestly. They allowed the first-time home buyer to borrow against their Social Security. All right, let me repeat that for you. They borrowed their first-time home payment, their first money down, their closing costs. They got to borrow it against their Social Security benefits. All right. And there's a reason for that. Why can they do that in Singapore that they can't do it here? The reason why they can get away with that in Singapore is because they considered Social Security payments going into a trust fund, a lockbox, not to be touched by anybody but the beneficiary of the person who paid into the system. Okay. So if you sit there and you look at your Social Security statement and they say, when you retire, you'll get $1,500 a month for the next, until you die. All right. In Singapore, they look at that and go, all right, how about we do this? We're going to estimate that you're going to live another 30 years after retirement, $1,500 a month. Grabbing the calculator, $1,500 a month times 12 is $18,000 a year times 30 equals $540,000. All right. So we're going to let you take some of that $540,000 and invest it into your house, your first-time house. All right. Just for the record, for you kids out there trying to figure this out, here's a list of 12 houses for sale in Maricopa County, all of them under $400,000. All right. So, but just think about how that system works. You're taking a planned benefit, that you're supposed to receive from the federal government, right, and using it to purchase a house. And what you're doing at that, if you had purchased the house using your Social Security funds, and let's say you'd purchased that 2 years ago, and you pulled out $100,000 and you put that in there, well, over the appreciation of the last 2 years, your $100,000 are actually going to be worth about $110,000, $115,000 in your house in equity. Right? That's a better return on investment than Social Security is going to get for you. So, but that's what they were able to do. So if Vivek Ramaswamy is, listening to my podcast, or any other young movers or shakers of the millennial generation who will be in government sooner or later and wants to figure out how do we do these things, we might want to start considering this. I'm not too into it because I already have mine. I have a house, right? But, for Zoomers, millennials, this would be freaking awesome. So somewhere out there, there's somebody under the age of 50 going, well, why don't we do this here? And there's somebody over the age of 65 going, you ain't touching my Social Security. Which is absolutely right, because that's the problem. What we do here in this country is that we don't actually consider Social Security a trust fund, a lockbox, something where you put money into and you don't take it out. The federal government has been quite happily spending Social Security income for forever. In fact, I remember distinctly back in the 2000 elections, then Vice President Al Gore, who was the Democratic candidate for president, popped up the idea in the debate. The Social Security funds should be put into a lockbox and not used for other funding mechanisms. That's the one thing the man said that I agreed with, and that's why it burned into my brain. And I was really disappointed that all the pundits and whatnot went out there and attacked that idea. I was like, oh, that's stupid. And I'm like, wait, that's a great idea. But I was also under the age, I was under the age of 30 back then. Anything that would actually get me Social Security when I retired sounded like a pretty good idea. But of course, everybody who's currently pulling out of the system thought that was a bad idea. Why? Because the trust fund is empty. There's nothing in that box except a bunch of IOUs. So we can't functionally do what Singapore does. So that being said, can we still do it on paper? I mean, everybody knows we have no problem making the money machine go brr around here. All right. And we all know that there is no money in Social Security. Okay. We have what's called a glorified Ponzi scheme right now, where first time, young employees are paying money into a system so they can pay that amount out to the retirees, even though that the money that the retirees put into that got spent for other government programs. Okay. And I'm not pointing about whether or not we weren't taxing enough or we were spending too much. I'm just saying that when they decided to spend money, there wasn't anything there. So they grabbed it out of the Social Security kitty. Right? But can we go and start going, okay, you first-time homebuyer, you're going to be getting $1,500 a month, $18,000 a year, $540,000 over the course of your lifetime if you only live to 95 after retirement. If you sit there and say, hey, give me $100,000 so I can have I have a down payment on my first house, and closing costs and paying real estate agents and everything else, if we do that and we just sign a little piece of paper saying we realize that this is going to come out of our total estimated Social Security payments, that I think the majority of 20 and 30-year-olds would do that tomorrow. Because, like I said, getting that first-time house, taking that first step onto the ladder, the first step onto the escalator, getting started on the whole thing is what makes the middle class, what makes people more financially stable, right? It makes the world a better place. So, it's funny, when I kicked into this thing, I went, oh my God, 9 minutes. haven't been talking a lot, and here we are 24, 25 minutes into it now, and I'm pretty much done with that. So, should we start looking at other countries and see how they do things? It is foolish to sit there. If you were ever in the situation where you're sitting there going, I'm the smartest person I know best, nobody has anything out there they can teach me, you're a fool, right? And the correlation of that is, if you are the smartest person in the room, go find a new room to hang out in, all right? Because you always want to have people around you that you can learn from. So if you find yourself in that room, I suggest you go outside, touch grass, watch the children and pets around water. Okay, you're not going to drive anything flooded. You're going to work your circles, and you guys are going to have a great weekend, and thank you very much.